Welcome back to episode 5 of Open Door Conversations. I am your host, Renata.
And I am your host, Fatima Williams.
And today's topic is titled Free the Root and Replant Yourself.
Interesting. I bet you they wonder how we come up with these topics. So I think one thing that we'll say, like we've always said and continue to say, is we're gonna always be transparent. We're gonna most of what we talk about is a lot of what we've gone through. Some may have been what we've encountered with others that have gone through therapy. And some just might be lessons that we learned along the way for ourselves. Um, so um this one is definitely a good one. Well, you know what? We say that every time.
And
I think I think it might be the season that they come in, because we did have one topic already chosen, and then we listened to Mr. Pastor Flowers and his little snippet, and we were like, oh no, we gotta switch this one around. So here we are today.
we're doing a switcheroo. Yeah. Well, why don't we open the door to this conversation?
Let's go.
Okay, so what are we talking about first? I think we want to cover what we mean by root.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's a good point. Well,
Yes.
I'm a root person. And my husband always laugh. He doesn't laugh anymore because I think now he understands what I mean by root. But he would used to pick with me all the time about, why do you always got to get to the root of something? I'm like, listen, because you don't grow. If roots are infected, right? You're not getting nutrients and everything that's produced from that, everything that comes from that root. Think about tree. Think about a plant. I actually decided to take a look the other day at why roots are important. And so, as I was kind of perusing through, Google, thank you, Google, for your ability to help us find information at, at the speed of light. But I looked up roots and why it's so important for them to be healthy. And you think about, we'll say, take for instance, a fruit tree or a flower. For those people who are familiar with, earth science and what happens in the plant world, in the plant kingdom and that type of thing, you understand that, and I won't try to use the words. It's been a long time since I since I have taken those courses. But um, well, one, photosynthesis, right? You know that, the sun and, what plants produce and all, like essentially the fruit that comes from a fruit tree.
Mhm.
Is it going to be good fruit or bad fruit? And that's going to be dependent upon how well rooted that tree is.
Right.
And so the healthier the roots, the the better the nourishment, the better that photosynthesis process is happening for that particular tree or plant. And so if a plant is not rooted well, we know that either A, it's not going to produce any fruit, or the fruit that it does produce is not going to be well for consumption.
Mm.
But that's a word for somebody. I know it was for me when I read it. I was like, whoa, think about that.
And so, in saying that, in what you just said about, it may not be good enough for consumption, that goes straight back to the word where it says you will know a tree by the fruit that it bears.
Mhm, mhm.
So either it's going to be good fruit or bad fruit based upon the roots that have been, that tree has planted.
Mhm, mhm.
And one way that we can relate that back to us as people, and what we mean about the roots as it pertains to us is, especially down in the South, especially in the Black community, when you meet someone, your family is always like, who were their people?
Right.
Who were they related to? Because why? You tell the person by the fruit that it bears. So if you come from this family that is well known to kick up chaos, uh, we might be a little leery about you hanging out with them, talking to them, or whatever, even though it might be 3 generations removed, but you're still connected to by that root.
Mhm.
And just like when we're doing family trees, we have that foundation, but everyone is a branch of that. And so what is the root that was planted within that family? What is the foundational thoughts, processes, ideas, ideology?
Yeah.
So to your point, it could be good for consumption,
Yeah.
or we might have to rethink this thing.
Rather rethink it. Okay, so listen. So I am transplanted in, in California. My roots are not here, but
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm transplanted here. And I remember one of the first places now I'm living here, but as a, I'm going to say as a tourist
Mm.
or on the tourist train or trail, one of the first places that I visited was it's not the redwoods, but essentially this place has like a lot of redwood trees. Beautiful place. Um, I'm gonna use the word like majestic. Like me going to that place, I'm like I'm always looking for something spiritual, and it was a very spiritual experience for me. But what I come to learn, how they do all of the talks when you're on like a trail or you're on some, tourist type nature thing
Mhm.
or whatever. And I remember the young lady talking about the significance of redwood trees. And the thing that she focused on was the roots of the trees. And she
Mhm.
talked about how some that are planted by man, you'll see those as standalone.
Wow.
Or when you notice actual redwood trees that have been essentially cultivated over time, because that's just I'm gonna say that's how God designed those to be and where he designed those particular trees to be planted. They're in I'm gonna say in bundles, so to speak.
Okay.
And the reason why is because and these trees they are alive forever, for long, long, long centuries, they say. And the reason why is because of their roots.
Mm.
And the roots of these trees are so interconnected. They're not independent. That's a word for somebody. They're
Mhm.
interconnected. And the health of these roots keep them grounded so much that um she talked about, of course, like they're being fed their nutrients and it allows for them, but they're so interconnected and that helps the health of this tree. And so you'll see them growing taller, taller, and the leaves and things that they bear is because of how well rooted they are. But the roots, the trees are the health of the trees are also a result of them being so interconnected with I'm going to say the family member tree. Now, let's bring that topic home to where we are talking about today, since this is a mental health type platform. As family members, here's one as friends, spouses, kids, we are connected. And sometimes we didn't choose that, right?
X.
Family that we are connected to. But the things that we produce in terms of, um, I have a diagram I use for clients that I work with. and we look at what we call the fruit or the leaves. And I say clinically symptoms.
Mm,
The things that are produced, be it mental health symptoms, i.e., depression, anxiety, dissociation, here's one: physical issues, health issues, the things that we see sometimes that manifest themselves, those symptoms, whatever they are a result ultimately of the things that we have been rooted in.
mm,
So that's what we mean by root, which is your family of origin, your belief system, right? Your, I don't know, what thought process. Like then when we say roots, that's what we mean by root. What are you rooted in? And who we become or who we are is a result of what we believe and also what we've been exposed to,
mm.
be it by other people or what we expose ourselves to. And whatever that is, you're rooted and there's going to be a manifestation of something.
Yes.
How healthy are your roots? That's the question.
That's definitely a question. And it's a very good question. Um, I think that sometimes we are well aware, especially when we're looking within our family of origin. We are well aware that those roots aren't healthy, but I think it's the fear of, and again, especially within the African American community, the fear of acknowledgement
Mm,
that my family ain't all the way together. Um, that if I speak on that or if I distance myself, then it's always I think I'm better. Or, oh, she don't want to be part of the family. He don't want to be part of the family. What's his issue? This is just how we do. They need to accept it. It's just so much when you try to free yourself from what is an unhealthy environment or an unhealthy root so that you can be replanted to grow healthy and to unlearn, as we'll get to with Pastor Flowers, unlearn those behaviors and those thought process and thought patterns. And to your point, though, it's not just within the family of origin. It can be in our friendships. It can be with coworkers, like you said. It could be in our environment. But the acceptance of those toxic environments comes from the toxicity that we started in, our foundation started in, which again goes back to, let's face it, our family of origin. And it may not be everyone, but somewhere in there is what got you, us, everyone to where they are. Um, so how do you identify that broken root or roots and then begin to remove yourself so that you can grow in a healthy space?
that is a good point. And I'm going to tell you, I think that in terms of how do you identify, right, those things, um, because we know we wanted to set this podcast up with, okay, how do we give people information? Where do you go? How do you find the support that you need? Certainly, this can be a form of support, and we certainly are not going to be like, okay, get everything from a social media or from a podcast. No, you need professionals. Now, for some people, where do they go? For some people, that could be their faith, right? And that avenue. For some people, it could be their friend circle. For some people, it is going to be the professional, right?
Mm.
The therapist, the person who has the degree, the skill set, the expertise, the knowledge to support you in that journey. I think we said it in another podcast. And I don't know, some clinicians may not necessarily agree with this, but I want to work like destigma. Is it destigmatizing? Is that a word? I don't know.
We gonna say it is.
I
You
feel
know,
like it's a word.
we
It's gonna be
we
a word today.
I feel like it's a word. It sounded like a word.
It sounds like a word. So we're gonna make that up if it's not and be okay with that. Or I can just say, we're gonna remove the myths of therapy. And we want people to know, especially in our community, it's okay for you to go and get help, for you to get a support person. Look, if you want to look at the therapist as a support person, go right ahead. Um, because uh, that's what we, that's what we are. We're support people.
Right.
Depending on your theoretical approach, I know for myself, I don't claim to be the expert on anybody's life, so I'm a collaborative other on your healing journey. But you have therapists that can support you in identifying. You may have friends, healthy friends. Here's one, friends that can, I say, that have the bandwidth or the space. They have the capacity to walk with you in identifying that or encouraging you in going somewhere to get the help that you need. If you have your church, if they have a counseling ministry or they have counseling pastors, could be a place for you. I'll tell you, in my work, a lot of pastors refer their congregants out
Yes.
to people when it starts getting into that kind of space. But those are places where you can go to get the help. Now, here's my question. I'm gonna throw it back to you. Then, if those are places, what are the types of things that are they're going to be identifying as rooted issues?
And it's you see that's that interconnection because I was just thinking that what is it? How do I identify
Mhm.
those roots that need to be removed
Mm,
or that have began to grow in me to change my growth? But and one thing that I will say to that before I go even further is when you begin to be uncomfortable. So when you are no longer comfortable in the
mhm,
skin that you're in the life that you're living, what is it now that is making you uncomfortable? Why am I no longer kicking it the way that I used to at the family barbecues? Why is it that I just don't like sitting around having this type of talking? Why is it that, this group of friends over here, I'm okay if I don't really talk to them a lot, but these over here, oh, we good, we cool, I kick it with. Why are you now becoming uncomfortable? What is
mm,
it about that initial foundation that no longer suits you, that no longer fits? And that's when you are able to begin to identify that, you know what? This isn't right. The way I was brought up, not that it was bad,
mm,
but it wasn't all the way good.
mhm,
My acceptance of being belittled, my acceptance of, here's one we talked about earlier, and we talked about it before. My acceptance of a man cheating on me continuously.
mhm,
What is that a reflection of? My parents staying together for the kids, but mom and dad weren't faithful to each other. We
mm,
saw that just as well as we saw them staying in the same house together. Like it wasn't hidden, but not understanding and recognizing that that was planting a seed in me.
mm, mhm,
Here's another one. How about raising our voices and yelling at our kids and whooping slash beating our kids? Um, So now that you don't do it, oh, the way that this generation raises their kids, y'all this, y'all that. No, because now I've recognized that that root was a damaging root as well.
Mm. You gonna get
Yeah.
an email on that, just so you
Email or text.
know. You might get an email on that. I got your back, but you might get an email.
Well, I think the biggest thing in that is how do you identify it is what begins to make you uncomfortable and not living your truth.
Yeah,
And when
but
you're afraid to live your truth. And so one of the points that he had so many Pastor Flowers made was I'm learning finding comfort in chaos.
mm,
Because when you start unlearning that is when you begin to be uncomfortable in the norm of your life.
what gets people to that point? Because let me tell you, I think, you know, Imma take it here. Imma think about Abraham, and God called him out of his found think about where Abraham was living before and the environment that his family was in. Not saying they we don't get a lot of detail about that, um, city and environment, all the things I know historians can, but the regular non-theologian people, we are reading that in the scriptures.
Right.
Know the details of that experience, but he was called out from his family. I'm not saying everybody need to be called out from their family. I'm just saying that when you begin to expose or you are exposed to different ways of doing things, then you begin to understand possibly that what I was living in or what I was exposed to or how my family did things may not be, I'm going to change the wording a little bit and not call it chaos. I'm going to say may not be the most healthiest,
Mm.
may not be the most emotionally mature. Me and my mom talk about it often. She probably give me a call after she hear this, but that's okay. I love you, mom. But one of the things my mom does is she will, sometimes share with me how she feels about my parenting
Yeah.
style. A good way. She'll reference like, "Oh, you know what? I'm so glad that you do this or that. I'm really, I really appreciate it's nice to see how you do this or how you do that." And me and my mom have talks all the time about, the way we were raised and that type of thing. And, she did what she knew to do, that kind of stuff. And I will say that it took me coming out from my family and the environment, and I'm going to say environment as in not just my immediate family at the time, but friends of family,
Mhm.
my friends and their family. Here's one, just the Black community as a whole, maybe. Not everybody, but a good chunk of people. Those are the messages that were perpetuated in terms of how we engage with our kids,
Mm.
you know? And so some of that dysfunction or maladaptive treatment or behavior or the things that we thought were beneficial in raising our kids and how we talk to them, how we discipline them, whatever else. Once I was removed from that environment and I got to see people engaging with their kids differently, engaging with their spouses differently, I was like, oh, kids get to tell their parents how they feel. Like that's a thing. People get to do this kind of stuff. Like what? That's a thing. But it was because I got away from my environment, my upbringing, my roots,
Mm.
I was able to see something different. Now, it may not be you moving away and going into military like we did. It may not be that for you.
Right.
Some people, it may be you change what you watch. You change your, maybe who you hang around at times. You change what you listen to. It may be you reading a book about parenting, going to a seminar, taking a
Mm.
free course, looking up some stuff on the internet, going to the library. They're still in existence. It may be you just intentionally doing work or doing some things to get new information to help you unlearn chaos or dysfunction. That's my 2 cents about it.
And here's one. How about get help and unpack it? I
Yeah.
think one thing that you hit on, and we will continue to hit on, is the myth of therapy within the Black community.
Mhm, mhm.
Because there's so much that we have to unpack, and it all of it shows up in so many different areas of our life. And here's another thing too, is although as we continue to grow and we continue to learn and we continue to develop as our own, it's almost like society now is fertile ground for that.
Right.
It's fertile ground for everyone to become themselves. And just as we're talking about, how do you become yourself with what you were taught, what you grew up with, what you saw all around you? And when you said something that hit me, and we've heard it before, is that our parents did the best that they could. Does it make everything that they did okay, and does that sweep it under the rug? No, because at the same time, they were adults. They knew what was best, what wasn't best, but they knew the right from wrong just as well. You know, um, but we can no longer hold them responsible for where we're at. Because if
Mhm.
we know we're in a place of discomfort, in a place of chaos, in a place of lack, now where does it become our responsibility to make those changes
Right.
that we want and that we desire to have in our lives and that we desire to pass on to our kids? The
Mhm.
teachings and the thought processes and the expression of themselves. Now that becomes our responsibility. Um, and again, we can no longer blame our parents. Now it's time to let go of those roots and find and replant yourself. And
Mhm.
like I said, to your point, and I think, and that's something that we have to make sure that we have a clear understanding. We're not saying leave your family, move away.
Do not
But in
leave.
that, I will say, sometimes when you do move away from your family is when you're able to best survive, because you have no other choice but yourself and God. And then you rebuild yourself in that way. But we are not saying to dismiss your family, dismiss your friends, do what we're not saying that. But
Mhm.
now it comes a point to where when you are uncomfortable, now that you are uncomfortable and you know you are uncomfortable, now it's time to find out why.
Mhm.
Why am I uncomfortable in these situations? What about me is growing and changing?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And I will tell you that in working with people over the last, 5 years clinically, this process of unlearning and relearning is probably one of the most scariest experiences for people. So let's not act like you're gonna just jump out and like
Right.
you just no, it's not. Because think about what that means. I was explaining this to someone the other day. I said, think about what that means. Everything that you've identified with, that you've been rooted in,
Mm,
that you've felt, even if it was unhealthy, you've felt a sense of grounding around. You now are being asked to examine all of that
mm,
and unlearn that and then learn something new and operate as a completely different individual. That's scary. That can be terrifying for some people. because what you've known and who you've become up until that point, you've been rooted.
Mm,
May not have been healthy roots, but you've been rooted. And now somebody is saying, let's cultivate something different so that you can have healthier roots and produce different fruit. Sure. But that, let's not mince work. That is a very scary thing for people to do. So, with that said, wherever you're going to get support, you have to. And sometimes I'm not telling people what to do. This is how I'm telling you. You have to make sure it is a good fit for you.
absolutely.
It's a good fit for you. It makes sense to you. If I'm loosely going to use the phrase feels right for you, but you get a sense of like, okay, I feel safe. I feel
Yes.
supported. I can unpack this stuff in this space and it's safe for me to do that. And I feel heard and understood and valued and
Mm,
respected. Those are all kind of, I'm throwing out keywords there, but those are all type of things that I want people to take away and, kind of hone in on when you're looking for support. Like those are things that you should be experiencing because this is a very scary thing to have a new identity with with healthier roots. You haven't been there before.
because you haven't been there before, and you are so right about the fearfulness of it. And just real quick, I'll share with you and with our audience, our listeners. Um, like we said, transparency.
Mm.
I've always been this independent person. Not that I didn't need anybody, but it was just me. I got it. I don't need it, whatever, whatever. Fast forward, I get married.
Mhm.
So then I don't want my husband to go through life with the typical Black woman. That's not support. Well, that was air quotes. So you all didn't see that. I put up air quotes because we know that is not us. But that he didn't feel supported, he didn't feel loved, he didn't feel taken care of. I'm supposed to take care of the home and I did that. I did that for years.
Mhm.
But then there became a point where I became uncomfortable
Mm.
because I realized I was no longer being myself. I was no longer going out there living and doing and pursuing the things that I had set out to do. And I know not to any fault of his, it was just what I chose to do. So there came a time when it became uncomfortable for both of us because I said, you know what? I'm taking my life back. I'm
Mhm.
going to start doing me again. So it's so funny because there's one time and again, he is so supportive and so loving. But one time he asked me to do something and I said no. And he like literally looked at me like, what? Like I said, no. He's like, you're really not going to do it? No. This is the beginning of me taking my life back. And
Mhm.
not that he had anything to do with me putting it on hold and pushing it to the side and becoming this fake it till you make it, this impostered wife.
Mm. Mm.
You know, and so, like you said, it was scary because then I'm like, okay, how is this gonna work? How is this gonna look? How is this after all these years? I'm like, no, bro, we're not doing that no more.
Right.
But thankfully, because of who he is, he was very receptive for it and was like, I've been waiting on you to become who you were supposed to be.
Mhm.
Is that gonna be everybody's story? No. Is that my entire story with everyone in my life? No, not everybody was as receptive as he is to that change of taking me back.
Mm. Mhm.
But what I can say is because, like you said, I had the support,
Yeah.
not only in my husband, but in my sisters and my friends, to be able to keep going. I'm beyond the need of acceptance for them.
Right.
And so to your point, you have to have that support in order to make those steps
Right.
and replant yourself with your roots and your grounded foundation. Because
Right.
it's not easy. It is very scary, especially if you're doing it at a seasoned age.
Yes. Yeah. That's true. That's true. Yeah, because 'cause you've lived a good amount of years with that, um, I'm gonna say mentality,
Yeah.
belief system,
Belief system, ideologies. Yeah.
right? Right, yeah, and so to somebody kinda poking at it and looking at information and asking you all these questions, it's uncomfortable. It really is. I think one of the best pieces of advice I got in, I think it was a grad school or undergrad, where someone said, "If you find a therapist who doesn't have a therapist, don't work with that person." And I was like, "Huh?" And I was like, "Oh, oh, oh, I know what he means. If nobody has been to therapy, how are they gonna support you?" And that may make not just therapy, it can be anybody. If a person hasn't been in your shoes or they haven't gone through the things you've gone through, or here's one, they just haven't maybe experienced that level of support like that. How are they going to, you know, their advice may be well-meaning, but they may not be giving you, um, advice from I'm gonna go here because one of the points he made was unlearning lessons taught from wounded people. It may not be from an unwounded place.
And oh, that is good because you have to be so careful in that. And for two reasons. Because like you said, the advice that they give you or the support they give you still be coming from a wounded place. But because there are very few people in our lives who we can be transparent with,
Mm,
you don't know if what you bring up is a trigger for them. Now you both
need some help.
and now you both in the boat.
Listen, okay, we're not gonna tiptoe on that because we're gonna leave that for another time because we do have an upcoming episode talking about triggers.
Yes,
And
we
I
did.
think that's an important topic because you're right. Like, man, we don't realize, how the things that we do can unknowingly trigger other people and vice versa. And so, yeah, stay
So
tuned.
that's your point about if you go to a therapist, make sure that they see somebody.
Right. Because they need to know what that experience because they'll know what that experience is like to sit on the other couch. I with the couples that I work with, I do something, and I haven't like posted on social media or anything like that, but I do something called like relationship connection points. And I'll send one out usually weekly or bi-weekly. And this week I was reminded to, send something that kind of puts into people's memory, so to speak, that the decision you make to get support from anybody, wherever that is, that's a courageous decision. I
Mm.
said, think about it. You are coming to somebody who you don't know. The only thing you know about me is what you see on my profile, or if you've been to a website, you can see like some semblance of my personality or, my areas of interest, a niche, and whatever I work with. Sure, but you don't know me. You don't know the clinician that you're calling or the person who picks up on the other end or however their process is. And you are going to entrust the chaos of your life or your relationship to somebody you don't know. And you are unpacking very deep rooted things about yourself, the way you think, the way you, right, respond or react, how you feel, you know, your upbringing. And you've been thinking about this situation
Mm.
or something all along. And somebody is about to come in with a different lens and they are going to let's be real, they're gonna poke holes in what you've experienced.
Ooh,
And it is scary. And all for the purpose, because I know we gotta wrap up, but all for the purpose of helping you uproot unhealthy stuff so that you can learn new information, learn new skills, learn new ways of engaging in relationships, learning new things, and replanting yourself.
right.
Yeah.
Well, you said a lot there. Man, that's a lot to digest, even for me. Look.
Listen, and I was thinking to myself too, because you just be like, oh my goodness, that's so true. Like as it was coming out, I was like, man, that's a tough place for people to be.
It's a tough place for people to be,
Yeah.
you know. And so, and to our listeners, that is what we do want to emphasize is that, you know, again, our door is always open. Always feel free to send us an email at opendoorconvo@gmail.com, because we will respond to those emails that we get. We will not just leave you out there hanging. We know that it does take time, as Naj spoke on, to find the right therapist for you. And during our conversations, there may be things that start to come up that you have not yet found a therapist, or you don't have that support group that you just need to just release, and just ask a question, or or get feedback on something. And that is what we are here for, to help you to find a therapist in your area, as well as be that bridge until you get to where you need to with a proper therapist, and support group. Uh, Because it's only episode 5, y'all.
It's only episode 5. But we are not people who wait to warm up.
That is true.
That's not our personality. Jump right in.
Let's get it.
Just
Let's get it.
let's
Like,
get let's go ahead and give you information. So, I think we may have touched on that, but I do think one thing we want to make sure that we do is start creating maybe a resource page so people can know where to go and what to do and how to get the support that they need, how to look up things in their area. We'll try to, throughout every episode, just kind of touch on we're having a conversation, but we also want to make sure that we are leaving room and space to give you information on where and how to get support. There are amazing therapists all over this nation, and especially because, again, we're highlighting as conversations for our community of people. And sometimes we are or have been the last to know
mm,
how to get information. And so, we dedicate ourselves to continually being educated and looking for and seeking out new resources and new training so that we can pass that information on in these podcasts. And so, we thank you again for tuning in with us today. Thanks for opening your door and having this conversation with us. And as always, as Fatima has said, you can email us any questions or comments that you have about this episode to opendoorconvo@gmail.com. And you can listen to all of our episodes on the Ebony Ascent platform at ebonyascent.com, as well as you can find us on Open Door Conversations on all the major podcast platforms. And until next time, remember that our door is always open.
it's always open. Till next time.
Have a good one, guys.